Hi, I'm Lila Vachon, and this is my mom, Dana St. Clair. I'm here in Hawaii on my way from Armenia to Jordan, and we're looking at this beautiful where we are. It's pretty awesome.
Awesome.
I think my mom's pretty awesome.
Well, ditto.
And so I just wanted to take advantage of her being here and getting to talk to her. And
we really like hanging out together.
We do.
We do.
I think she's
amazing. We text a lot every day.
So my mom believes in reincarnation and past life recalls.
See, she's springing this on me. She hasn't told me in advance what we're going to be talking about.
And so I'm curious, like, what about this life do you find most surprising? Like, what did you not anticipate about being reincarnated right now as you? And what did you anticipate? Like, what did you see coming, and what does make sense to you? Like, you're like, oh yeah, this is how I thought it would be.
What a multifaceted question.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So, when I was in my early 20s and I first began reading Alice Bailey, and Alice Bailey talks about the evolution of human consciousness and what we are all capable of.
Who's Alice Bailey?
Alice Bailey was an esoteric writer. She established what's called the Arcane School, which is still operating.
Okay, cool.
And just look up Alice Bailey. Better than me trying to explain her. So when I read her stuff, I was like, oh my God, this is all so explanatory. And as I continued reading and looking at the world around us and the way many humans interact with themselves, their lives, others, the world, I started thinking, I wonder when Alice Bailey published this material. And I looked, and at that time, this was the very early 70s, I think the book that I was reading at that time had been published in the very early 40s. And I went, 30 years? It's been 30 years. How come things aren't more evolved? How come humans aren't nicer to themselves? How come humans aren't nicer to each other? How come this world is like really messed up? Well, and then time's gone on, and now I'm 70. And I'm going, okay, this is being human on planet Earth. We're all just chugging along here. Chugga, 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 chugga. And so that was something from my early days that I evidently anticipated that human consciousness would evolve faster. So that's one thing.
That you were surprised by.
Another thing was my dad. When I was a little girl, do you remember the movie Cocoon?
Yeah.
And Brian Dennehy, who was one of the aliens who was in human form, at one point went boop, and light came out of his eye.
Yeah.
I kept expecting your granddaddy to do that when I was a little girl, and revealed to me that he was who I believed that he was. Well, it turns out he had a really horrible father. And my father was so emotionally scarred by his father.
Yeah.
By the time I met my father, he was 30-something, 3, 4. He should have been on antidepressants.
Oh, wow, yeah.
This was the early 50s. Antidepressants weren't really a thing then.
Right.
But my dad was pretty messed up and shut down in reaction to the harsh terribleness of his own dad. So that was a disappointment to me, because I think I consciously chose, whoa, I want to be with you. You'll be my dad. It'll be so great. Yeah, well, not so much. And another thing that I find fascinating, in my late teens, early 20s, I became aware of the fact that many of the times that I incarnated, I lived at the end of something great. That was the way the word phrased itself, at the end of something great. And at that time, let's see, 20 was 70s, early 70s. And I looked around at the United States of America and I thought, that's not going to happen in my lifetime. The United States isn't going to end or diminish in my lifetime. So maybe I am living at the end of something great in this incarnation. Imagine that.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that before, that you would always felt like you lived at the end of something.
At times, not every
times.
life, but I would see
At
different
times.
incarnations. So,
Well, how would you see them? Like, how would you experience the different incarnations? Like, you would close your eyes? And
no,
you'd have, like,
they
imagery,
show
or-
up in different ways. You know, I mean, sometimes I'm just, washing the dishes, minding my own business, and all of a sudden, ka-chink, some fascinating realization shows up in my brain. One time, I was being a bank teller, and a young woman came in who had a cleft lip. And we were talking, and she smiled, and one half of her face, she was just gorgeous. The other half of her face was different. She was still pretty, but it just into me that I, too, in a fairly recent incarnation, had a cleft lip. And it was as if I immediately knew what it felt like to be on her side of it. And different countries that I've always been fascinated by, Japan, Persia, wasn't Iran, it was Persia, the pre-Civil War South, things that I guess I feel more resonant with than I should, considering my upbringing. Yeah, there have just been, it comes in many different ways.
Yeah. No, that's
but
really
it's
interesting.
been my whole life since before I could remember, because the first incident I consciously remember, I was 5 years old. And as it was playing out, I sat there comparing it to other people that I had known in past lives. So I was already wired that way, geared that way before my change of teeth, which
Oh,
I
wow.
feel is very significant in the evolving life of a young human being. It's like asking me, do you believe in reincarnation? Is like asking, do you believe in breathing?
No, that I find it really interesting because I don't know what I believe in. I was raised to believe in reincarnation, but
And yet I
don't
never
actually-
shoved it down your throat.
Oh no.
'cause,
But like when you're just raised within an environment, and so it's like what you believed, and so naturally it's what I would believe. But I don't know what I believe, and I love that you know what you believe. I think it's reassuring to know what you believe in.
When I was 15 or 16, I was in high school, and my very good friend, Angel Kwolek, Angel, if you ever hear this, I'd love to be in touch.
Look her up on Facebook.
Funny. From Angel Kwolek was the first time I heard the word reincarnation. And rather than going, oh, what's that? Could that be real? What does this mean? My reaction was, oh, great, there's a word for it. Yay!
Oh, so you'd had past life recalls before you knew about the concept of reincarnation. That's interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it didn't even occur to me that other people didn't remember past lives or didn't have inner voices. When Scott and I first got together, he was working in the field of mental health. And I mentioned pretty early on, well, I hear voices, and there was a pause.
Yeah.
And Scott said, well, Dana, do you realize that's a sign of mental illness? And I said, it all depends on what the voices tell you. My voices have been super helpful. One of them, when I was a child, would just randomly every now and then say, remember what this feels like. And as I got to be a teenager, for some reason, maybe they were concerned I wasn't catching the drift. the voice would say, remember what this feels like because you are going to be on the other side of it. And I knew it had to do with raising children. And so I raised Lila and her brother Isaiah, remembering what it felt like, remembering how super disappointed a 7-year-old could get about something that an adult would go, oh, don't be upset. Well, sure, you can be upset because when you're 7, it's upsetting.
Yeah.
And especially their teenage years, because many teenagers are just off the bat considered persons of suspect. Well, that sucks.
Well, we were pretty awesome teenagers, though.
You were pretty awesome, period. I had great material to work with as a mom.
You were a good teenage mom, though. You're good.
And as it turned out...
Or not teenage, but
Yeah,
mom of teenagers.
of teenagers. The woman who became my first mother-in-law, whom I met when I was 15, was the #1 best role model, Rose Montner, in how to be a friend to teenagers. And so when Lila and Isaiah had their teenage friends, I enjoyed them so much. And there were people who would just come out to our house and they didn't care if Lila or Isaiah were there. They just wanted to hang out with me. I was nice to them.
It's good to be nice to
It's
people.
good to be nice.
It's good to be
Yes.
nice. Yeah. Well, cool, Mom.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Hello.